Yo, I'm Bob, into Marvel, happen to be totally blind since birth, talking about Spider-Man, the animated series. This episode is Sting of the Scorpion. Now, it is Season 1, Episode 6, but I have run into several fans online that watch this right after Night of the Lizard, and I also think it goes right after Night of the Lizard, chronologically. We'll get into that, though. Sting of the Scorpion premiered on March 11th in 1995. And it's one of my favorites from season one. I think it's a great villain origin episode. We also get to see an amazing flashback regarding J. Jonah Jameson, played by the late great Ed Asner. So I like watching this one as the second episode of the show because I think it serves as a neat little second part to a duology featuring the neogenic recombinator. In the pilot, we got to see how it affected Kurt Connors, what he was using it for. And in Sting of the Scorpion, we actually get to meet the professor who designed the neogenic recombinator, Farley Stillwell. We get to see his plans for the device, and he kind of uses it willy-nilly as well, doesn't really think of the consequences after he uses it on Mac Gargan. And I like when the episode opens right away, we see Mac. He is tailing Peter Parker. Jameson is just not willing to let this thing go. I think for quite a while, even before the show began, even off screen, he has been curious as to just how Peter has been able to get such wonderful shots of Spider-Man. And, you know, you've got the really fun fight scene at the beginning of the episode. So Mac is able to elude Spider-Man. Peter has also been turned down by Felicia Hardy, voiced by Jennifer Hale. I think this is the first time I heard Jennifer Hale voicing anyone, right when I had watched the Spider-Man animated series. I don't think I heard her in anything else prior to the show. But ever since the animated series, I've always been able to pick Jennifer out in video games and TV shows, you know, animated series, things like that. So I really like the relationship between Robbie Robertson and JJ in this episode. Robbie is one of my favorite characters in this, as well as so many other incarnations of Spider-Man, because he knows how to, most of the time, get JJ to listen to reason. And this episode is no exception. You've got JJ, and he is just bound and determined to figure out how Peter is getting the pictures of Spider-Man. He doesn't like not knowing how the magic works. And, you know, especially since the events of Night of the Lizard, I get the sense that, you know, he's really curious now, hence why he would have hired Mac Gargan to follow him around right after the events of Lizard. So when we see Peter discovering exactly who's been following him, I like how he tries to get all menacing and dress up like Spidey and get this whole nonsense to stop. But he's actually made the situation worse for himself, unknowingly triggering a flashback for JJ. And we get into that later in the episode, but I like how you probably see little bits and pieces of him thinking about the tragic incident that occurred in his life as to why he despises men who wear masks. As I said in the last video, though, that doesn't stop JJ from working with Mysterio later, and you know, he just kind of does what he needs to do when he needs to do it. If it'll get him a good story or if it'll expose Spider-Man, as we see him here in this episode. So after Spidey tells JJ to get off of his case, that's just going to spur JJ on because he doesn't like to be threatened. And I like how we get to meet Farley Stillwell. He goes ahead and uses the recombinator on Mac, transforming him into the Scorpion. And he sounds so happy with the recombinator, and he doesn't really care that it's hurting Mac. Mac starts to scream as his body changes. I love the voice work done by Martin Landau here in Sting of the Scorpion. Although they looped the same scream over and over and over again, which I don't know why they did, but I mean, heck, it's a scorpion scream, so I guess it works. So you've got JJ and Farley. They are not thinking about the consequences of their actions at all. Mac just wants to be respected more. He's tired of everyone calling him names. He's kind of, before he transforms into the Scorpion, I picture him as quite a bit smaller. I think from the sound effects of all the bones cracking as he is transforming, I would imagine he grew quite a bit. He's probably a lot more buff as Scorpion. And I like how Martin Landau makes him sound even more sinister and menacing after his transformation. And of course, the changes in his genetics are also affecting him mentally, just as they did with Kurt Connors. So I really like watching this right after Night of the Lizard, because we get to see a bit more of what the Recombinator can do. And of course, later on, we'll see the flashback as to how it impacted Peter Parker as Spider-Man. So I like how much of a role the Recombinator plays in the first 2 seasons of the show. And, JJ is obsessed with capturing Spider-Man, figuring out who he is, why he wears a mask. He feels like Spidey's a menace. And right after the first fight that Spidey has with Scorpion, he's doing a lot of damage. And there's this one guy piloting JJ's chopper, and JJ wants him to stay, and you've got that scene where the guy's like, no, I'm not doing that. I've got a family to think about. You can fire me if you want to when we get back to base, but I'm not doing this. I don't want to lose my life to this maniac. Well, he doesn't say the last part, but I mean, you got to know that he's thinking that. And I think JJ has probably started to wonder exactly what the heck he's unleashed, especially when Robbie shows him footage of Scorpion on a rampage, and that's when we get the flashback to a tragedy in JJ's life. We see that he was investigating I would imagine a mob boss, a crime boss, as he says. I think it's a crime boss, and he won't let the story go. The guy hires a thug to put it into JJ, but his wife is caught in the crossfire. And you don't see JJ ever really confiding in anybody. But, he tells Robbie exactly why he hates men in masks. He has let that hatred consume him, and now he has unleashed something that he's not going to be able to stop by himself. So he's actually going to have to team up with Spider-Man to stop the Scorpion. And I love how much sorrow and pain Ed Asner puts into his performance as JJ when he is relating the events of the tragedy in his life. He sounds like he is wearing his heart on his sleeve. He is confiding in Robbie. You don't really see a lot of that. And I love Rodney Saulsberry's performance as Robbie Robertson in the episode as well. You get the sense that these two trust each other. And so you've got the final fight with Scorpion and Spider-Man. And apparently Scorpion thinks if he can puncture Oscorp's reactor, he can get at the radiation and it'll change him back to Matt Gargan, because he doesn't like the way he looks. He thinks he's a freak now. And I guess it has affected him mentally, because you can't just poke a hole in the reactor and hope that the radiation will transform you back into good old Matt Gargan again. I like that it's kind of affecting him mentally there. As you saw the Recombinator affecting Kurt in the last episode, he wasn't really thinking clearly either, trying to transform everybody into lizard people. And I like how Spider-Man and JJ, they've got to team up. And of course, the episode does end with Scorpion being defeated and taken to jail. I like how this is the first of the Sinister Six that we're introduced to. Oh, the Insidious Six, actually, in this incarnation. That's what they call the six bad guys once they start teaming up in season 2 to take on Spider-Man. If you watch it in this particular order, though, we also get this bit of dialogue from Aunt May when Spider-Man is going to head off to fight Scorpion. He's like, "Oh yeah, I was supposed to meet you for lunch," and Aunt May, played by the wonderful late great Lena Gary, she mentions Mary Jane Watson and Anna Watson. And if you put it here, yeah, I mean, Spider-Man hasn't met Mary Jane yet. He doesn't know what she looks like or anything like that. And, he's more interested in Felicia. Why would he want to have lunch with somebody he doesn't know? He still tries to, at the end of the episode, mend fences with her. She actually shows up and she's like, "Yeah, I loved it when you ran away from me like that. It made you even more interesting to me," which is an interesting turn of events for Peter. So I don't really agree with that particular way to treat your partner. If I act like I'm not interested, which Peter didn't do, but Felicia's like, "Oh, okay. You kind of walked away from me here, so now I find you interesting." Peter's like, "What? Oh, okay. Guess we can have dinner." He doesn't really do that anymore until he, starts wearing a certain alien costume. He kind of becomes a bit of a jerk there, but I don't think he intentionally did it at the beginning of the episode. He was more interested in trying to stop the bank robbers, but. Yeah, so now Felicia wants to see him because he kind of shrugged her off, and she finds him unpredictable, surprising. I guess she kind of likes stuff like that. So now he's like, "Oh, goody, I get to date the girl." I don't really think he understands exactly what the heck is going on as to why she started to take an interest in him, but he's having a really good day by the end of the episode. But I give this one a 10 out of 10 because I really love that flashback with J. Jonah Jameson talking to Robbie about why he is so interested in exposing Spider-Man. He feels like he's a menace because he lost his wife to a tragedy in the past. And I love the chemistry between Rodney Saulsberry and Ed Asner. I think that JJ is a bit of a jerk to so many people, but I like how much he shows respect for Robbie. He feels like he can confide in Robbie in this episode, and you don't really see that. JJ doesn't really show tenderness toward anybody. He doesn't really seem like he likes anybody. Well, I mean, he's got a hard outer shell, but I think he probably has a chewy center. He just doesn't really show it all that well. As we see him interacting with his son in a later episode, he really does care. But he's a hard-bitten journalist, and you really don't get to see him showing that side very much. So next time we're going to be talking about the Spider Slayer. That's another one of my favorites. We're introduced to a certain Mr. Fisk as well as the Smythes, and they're some of my favorite characters in the show. So be here for Spider Slayer next time. That is season 1, episode 3. If you're watching it in this order, but it's actually the second episode that was aired. Till then, guys, thanks for watching.